Brace yourself for the ultimate test, the ABSA Off-Road Championship, and fast-track yourself through the race with vehicle and asset finance from ABSA. Today, tomorrow, together.
East London, South Africa's sixth largest city and the only river port in the country, is set on the broad Buffalo and the Nahoon rivers and is renowned for being the gateway to the Sunshine Coast of the beautiful, lush Eastern Cape. Fondly known as Buffalo City, East London is 990 kilometers from Johannesburg, and it's a bustling port which also boasts stunning beaches and a temperate climate. It's here that the 2007 African Heritage Anatole 500 found its home at the end of July for almost a week's worth of all-out racing. The event, round 5 of the ABSA Off-Road Championship, doubled up as the FIA Cross Country World Cup second round and made SA off-road racing history. As documentation and scrutineering took place in East London, the nerves were just starting to tingle. Meanwhile, the local BMW lads were also kept on their toes as the X-Ray BMW X3 of Paulo Nobre and Felipe Palmeiro stopped off to have some last-minute adjustments made to try to conquer the Eastern Cape bush and the local and overseas competition. Quite a homecoming it was for the son of off-road supremo, the late Arthur Abraham, Scott, who forms part of the X-Ray team. This pairing took 37th in this year's Dakar Rally. The Russians in a Nissan Patrol brought out Mikhail Narishkin and Artem Nazledikov, and they too have years of tough off-road and rally experience overseas to their long list of credits. The locally built Nissan Navara has been racing well at the hands of Norway's Ivar Tollefsen and his British navigator Quinn Evans, and they were definitely the four men going into the Heritage with their local knowledge a trump card in the build-up. Last year's event, the first FIA outing to the southern tip of Africa in the Limpopo province's Polokwane, was held in icy weather and was a fine test for man and machine. But this time round, there would be something more in store for the intrepid racers, and they were ready indeed.
Oh yes, it's first time we are here. Last year we tried to come, but unfortunately the race in South Africa was in the same week as the big race in Brazil, Rally dos Sertões, so we could not come. And this year, Rally dos Sertões will be one week after South Africa, so we are very happy, so we could come for the first time here.
So you think the conditions are going to be pretty much the same as in Brazil?
I don't know. I heard a lot about this race. One guy from our team, Scott Abraham, the big nanny, he told us a lot about this race. But we should see, like first day, we should feel the special stage to realize how is the dangerous things, how is the condition of the special, to maybe for tomorrow can try to be more aggressive. First day to be aggressive, it's not a good and intelligent thing, because in the first day we never win the race, but in the first day we can lose the race for good.
Wise words. For the Italians, things were serious, very serious.
With this car, the T2 is a serious vehicle, and we go fast, but not too much, not like at Proto, because this car is very, very prototype. This is a serious car. No, nothing is not possible modification, not possible nothing. We go to regular and try don't break the car.
Tollefsen knew the Beamer and its occupants well and understood that he had a tough job ahead of him.
Yes, I know the X3. It's a very good car. It's probably a car amongst the best in the world. The driver has also been driving an X3 or an X5 for more than 2 years, done 2 Dakars with it, doing the full World Championship, racing in Brazil with it, so he's very experienced in that car and experienced in racing, so it's going to be a hard job to beat him.
And as they rolled out of the city centre on their way to complete the first 92 Ks of leg 1 to decide the starting order for the next day's racing, the teams knew they'd have to marry hard racing and conservation of the car and body to get it to the other side. For the locals, having the off-road circus there was great, to say the least.
This event is going to mean so much for the people of the Eastern Cape. In terms of tourism, it means that the people of the Eastern Cape are about to see a spectacular event, and we really appreciate the fact that it's one of the hugest in the country. And it's also going to mean an economic boost for this area.
There was certainly a boost of speed and power for Nobre and Palmero in the X-Raid X3, who were flying along early on. Nobre was triumphant in the 05 South American Rally Championships, while his co is also no slouch. They proved it here in East London. Tollefson is a Norwegian mountaineer and adventurer who aims to conquer the Dakar Rally early next year in this car. Evans is along for the ride, and what a ride it's been so far. They're third in the National ABSA Championship standings. The Italy-based Garosci and Briani were battling to settle down in the dust and dry conditions in the Rally Art Mitsubishi Pajero 3.2 litre. Garosci has a long list of achievements on African soil and has raced in Paris, Dakar, Morocco, Tunisia and in Egypt, but this is the first time that he's ventured this far south, and he was loving it. The Russians, Mikhail Narishkin and co-driver Artem Nasledikov in a Nissan Patrol also needed to adapt to the dusty local conditions to be a big factor. They looked to be a little short on speed early on though. The Muscovite Narishkin, however, was enjoying the car, a six-cylinder which put out 265 horsepower at 4,900 revs per minute with a 420-litre fuel tank. Quite a load. But then, just about halfway through, it became clear that they developed a problem and needed to stop and repair. A severely damaged prop shaft slowed them drastically, and there were no spares for them back at pits. Cobus van Tonda and Rian Guapa and the Unifreight Ford Ranger were the first South Africans through and clocked a time 3 seconds faster than Nobre and Palmero over the first leg. Brothers Henry and Maurice Matten are world record holders for consecutive off-road races finished in their flying Class D Ryobi Nissan hardbody. They are a crowd favourite and they know it. Bloemfontein-based Roacon entered the brothers David and Gary White, and they've had a fine season thus far. They were leading the special class out there, clocking just 1 second over the hour mark for the distance. Dalmasman Ramon Besaidnout and Stefan Locke in their NTT Dalmas Toyota Hilux were also on a mission and going well after a fine opening half on stage 1. But once the opening stunts had been completed, it was time to repair all the damage that was achieved in just about an hour's worth of racing. And there was a lot of that. Just imagine an off-road mechanic's life for a second. Get the car spick and span, ready for the off. Then you get it back an hour later, broken, bent, all messed up. And then you have to put it all back together again. For the next day, it's got to be done again. And the day after that. And the day after that. Yes, you guessed it. Got to do it all again. As for the weather, an unexpected cold front had hit the whole of southern Africa, and temperatures had plummeted. In fact, it was close to 0 degrees. Some of the overseas competitors could have been forgiven for thinking they were back in Europe in the middle of winter. However, the racing was hot, and Tollefson and Evans won stage 1 by 93 seconds from the X-Ray team, while Fontonda and Guapa led the South African challengers home, in turn 74 seconds ahead of the Zamatin brothers.
Vehicle and asset finance from ABSA, going the extra mile to get you financed. ABSA, going off the beaten track to find solutions.
This is our look back at the FIA African Heritage Cross Country race in East London in the Eastern Cape. And on the opening day, the Norwegian adventurer Ivar Tollefson and the Quinn Evans combination was a fine one.
Yesterday was excellent. We had a very good run through the stage, and we managed to pull out a bit of a lead on the BMW behind us, so it was good.
And today's game plan?
We need to just maintain the pace, really. It's still early, it's going to be a long event, and we'd like to keep out in front, but you know, there's a lot happening today, and we want to just try and make sure we're safe.
For Tollefson, it would have been ideal to see a few cars ahead. Did they like leading?
No, not really. We'll be the first car on the road today. Obviously, it's a little bit more slippery because it's fairly loose on the top, so it's good to get 5 or 10 cars together away. But then again, if you one day want to win, you need to get used to lead and open. So I think it's good for us to do that. And with the tracks we saw yesterday, it won't be a problem. And first 80k today is the same as yesterday, so all that's been rubbed off nicely. I think that'll be okay.
No problems with the car?
Car is good. Built here in South Africa.
We'll make a South African out of him yet, yeah. For the Italians, things were quick, too quick, and a little funny too.
But yesterday is very, very funny. It's the first time in the South Africa race. It's very, very funny, very, very fast. We go very, very, very fast. Not normally cross the other car in the special stage, but now we know with the system it's okay. Very funny and very fast race yesterday. Today we go to see.
What's your plan for today?
But today we go to see because it's very long day. This is a T2 car. It's not a prototype, and in the rocks in the hole we don't go too fast because a broken car and for 500 kilometers is too much. We had no assistance because 15 minutes it's nothing. And today we go to see, and after when you redo the same track in reverse, it's possible attack in front of if you not have in front of Narinsky with the other T2. TT1 is not important for us.
So Garosci and Briani had a rude awakening to the South African conditions, and the Italian-based team with all its experience had some more to add to the resume. They were more than 11 minutes down, but were leading in Class T2. But the man leading that class was Tollefson. He slotted into the Nissan team seamlessly this year and has been a great asset to manager Glenn Hall and his team. They were lying third in the National Championship. Stage 2 from the overnight stop at the Fish River Sun would be a tough one of more than 500 Ks, and it needed a lot of concentration and application. Nobre and Palmyra had both early on. X-rayed BMW X3 flying the Brazilian flag with its Portuguese navigator aboard was doing a good job of holding station and setting a good pace, but still falling further back behind the Navara. Garosci and Briani were gingerly picking their way along, determined to make it to the finish rather than setting any fastest intermediate times. As for Fantonda and Guapa, they were giving it horns. The Unifreight Ford Ranger was enjoying the fast sweeping roads, and so was the crew inside. The Zermattens had clocked up 2 did not finishes early on in the season, but after the Botswana 1000, they were ready to do battle again, and here they were hoping to prove that their old consistency was back again. Brothers White were also going very well in the Rurikon back, David at the wheel and Gary calling. so don't Lockdio and the Toyota about 15 minutes behind them to keep them honest. Ramon and Stefan only recently started their off-road careers and have impressed all and sundry with their quick improvement, and there's a lot more where that has come from. And there was a large surprise waiting in the Amatole Mountains. A white and thick blanket of snow was waiting for the racers as they wound their way to the top and the designated service point. Tollefson and Quinn got there first.
It was a difficult start in the morning. We had the sun literally just into the car, 1 meter above the horizon, and we were driving just into the sun for the first 70-80k. So that was very awkward, sitting like that and driving one hand all the way. But I think we gained a minute on the BMW there on the first 87k. Then I'm afraid we lost the same minute on the next one. I'm not sure, but we went wrong on one turn, had to come back again, and it was very slippery in the woods. Really, it was sliding. Last bit coming down here, a little bit of snow, but not enough. But it's beautiful.
Standing here looking around you must make you feel at home.
It's extremely beautiful, really.
For Tollefson, like home, and ditto for some of the other racers from overseas. But then again, not quite so for the man from Brazil, Paulo Nobre, in the X-Raid X3 BMW, which was looking rather worse for wear.
Yeah, it's funny because Rally dos Sertões, that is our rally, has some special states that reminds a lot here, and the only thing is not that cold. And it was my first time driving in a rally with ice and snow. It's really scary.
And looking around you now with snow on the mountains.
No, it's fantastic because like people cannot think that there is snow and mountains like that in Africa, but it's funny. We are in Africa and with snow and everything. Very interesting.
While the pit crew were doing their best to sort out the little irritations on the Beamer, the Pajero turned in for home, and they were very glad to see the designated service point. For the Italian crew in the Rally Art Mitsubishi, it was a day with a taste of a trip around the whole globe, all in one long round trip.
Everything is okay, it's fantastic. In the same race, I've seen the scenario of Monte Carlo Rally, New Zealand, 1,000 lakes in Suomi, Finland. Incredible.
And the weather out there today, mountains and the snow, this is Africa.
I hope that it's incredible, but it's Africa. When I see the snow, the first time I see, we round the road, it's not Africa.
And the route?
The route is very good. We go slowly because at the moment we are leader in the T2. No one after us, no one before. And it's a run, actually we run for fun. I'm here for this reason.
And they were clearly having a lot of that. As Tollefson hit the road after his compulsory 15-minute stopover, the sun started warming proceedings up ever so slightly. And then the BMW got its marching orders for the ride home too. Tollefson and Quinn were putting together a command performance. With a little two-door diesel Pajero sailing along at its own clip, managing the rocky and undulating parts very well. The Zermattens from the East Rand were also going solidly and were just 90-odd seconds off Tollefson's pace in the first leg and not far off it in the first half of the second stage either. The Whites were setting the second fastest time for the day's racing in the invitational event, while Van Tonda and Kopa were letting it all hang out on top of the mountain. Besaidnout and Locke were next, with the Amatole 500 participants Michael Whitehouse and Dean Langton in the Regent Bat trying to find a way past. Tollefson and Quinn, though, were dominating the African Heritage Cross-Country Race's second stage completely. They were ahead by almost 20 minutes at this stage and getting further ahead with every turn of the wheel. A very impressive drive. And the one good thing about that for Brazil's Paulo Nobre and his Portuguese navigator Felipe Palmeiro and their X-Ray BMW X3 was that there was no dust in front of them. The Whites were through next, and they were obviously relishing their chance to compete next to the overseas teams and big names. While the other sibling team in the invitational event, the Zermattens, were doing a good job with their Ryobi Nissan, even though they've been plagued by small problems that have bedeviled their 2007 campaign. Van Tonda and Quapo were making the Ford Ranger sing to their tune, and they were playing sweet music to go along with it. With Besaidnout and Locke also in full cry on the way home. Besaidnout is a former bike racer, so he knows how to read the terrain, and it shows in his fine driving. At the line after stage one, it was Tollefson and Quinn in the Nissan Navara who brought it home in 7 hours and 9 minutes, and that gave them a healthy 30-minute lead over the men in the X-Ray Beamer in second. For the locals, the Whites held sway by just 6 minutes over the Zermattens.
Vehicle and asset finance from ABSA. Finance from ABSA, going the extra mile to get you financed.
This is High Octane's review of the African Heritage Cross Country in East London. And after the second leg, there was some serious repair work to be done. And there was still a lot of work to be done out on the road too.
Yeah, tomorrow's a whole different game. Now it's pretty similar to what they do in Dakar. Now you've just got an Ono and Ato. You know, it's just a case of keeping it together, driving a long distance, getting it to the end.
The Nissan crew needed a replacement windscreen after Tollefson and Quinn connected a tree, while the BMW lads were rather casual after a good day out on the bush tracks of the Eastern Cape. For Ramon Besaidnout, there was just no letting up though.
Nee, ons gaan op die passie wat ons gery het, ons gaan presies net so aan. Ons gaan probeer om die pas te hou. Jy weet obviously het ons 'n bietjie voordeel nou. Ons weet hoe lyk die roete en goed is nou so, ja, dit behoort seker net beter te gaan.
The Italians were quietly going about their business, enjoying themselves with just the finish in mind. While the Rubicon camp had the Whites well placed in their bat, still David didn't quite know why he'd got out of bed that morning.
I don't know this morning. After yesterday, I really enjoyed it, but I don't know why I'm doing this morning. But as soon as I get started, I'll know why. It's just lovely driving the car. It was nice terrain yesterday. I really enjoyed it. And we're just going to go for the fun today. We've proved what we wanted to prove yesterday, and we had a nice result, and just want to enjoy it today.
Others knew exactly why.
We do motorsport because we love it, and we've got the opportunity here to compete against the international competitors. And I mean, it's an opportunity once a year we've got, so that's why we're making use of that.
Tollefson and Evans were certainly taking advantage of it and were completely in control with 2 more days and more than 800 Ks to go. With the X-Ray BMW making full use of the only motorsport event in South Africa this year that will count towards a World Series of any sort. The Beamer battled a flat and minor technical niggles late on the first stage, which set them back, but they seem to have that sorted out on stage 3. The Italians were still doing what they did from the word go and were solidly batting away, going at a steady, if unspectacular clip. The Whites were also committed, but at the same time realized that they needed to conserve the Rubicon bat to get it to the end, and that's what they tried to do. The Zermattens, meanwhile, having finished 10th overall and winning Class D in the Amatole 500, ran into mechanical failure and had to call it quits. While the Ford Ranger's interior obviously was just too warm for one's hands as Van Tonder and Guapa charged by. And Besaidnout and Locke kept going well in the longest event they've tackled so far. At DSP, the locals were watching in awe as mechanics and drivers went at it in 15 minutes to get the cars ready for the long haul home. And as each one of the contenders in the 6 different classes came in for service, there was a sigh of relief as the pit crews knew that their charges were okay and that they could still go to work. And still the temperatures on top of the Amatole mountain was freezing. The weatherman for once was right. It just did not let up, and the cold front had all of South Africa in its freezing grip. Still, and to a certain degree, it did help that the cars then didn't overheat. Onto the homeward journey, the Nissan Navara crew plastered on the pace, and in the forest, the windy conditions didn't make it any easier. Luckily, the route had dried out somewhat. The 39-year-old Nobre and 30-year-old Palmeiro were combining well in the car, and Nobre was proving that his second place in the 06 Pharaoh Rally in Egypt was no fluke, even though they wrong-slotted here. Leg 3 would be another 8-hour slog for the Mitsubishi team, but they were certainly very consistent and took no chances. Their hearts were set on a finish. The dust, though, was becoming a factor as things dried out, and that's what Van Tonder and Guapa were finding out. Luckily, they didn't have to contend with too much of it in front of them. While the whites were again putting together one of the quickest drives of the day in the Rubicon Bat. David drove solo for a while in last year's ABSA series, but the moment he got his brother into the car, they became championship contenders, and they'll be a force to be reckoned with when the points are tallied up at the end of the 8-race-long series. Besaidnout and Locke were still piling on speed as the NTT Toyota Delmas team took everything they and the terrain could throw at it, and they were loving it. Back at the Fish River Sun, there was happiness for the Nissan crew as they maintained their dominance at the front after a strong drive. But Nobre and Palmeiro, after sorting out the BM, had actually won the stage by 4 seconds, while the Russians could not get the Nissan's drive shaft repaired in time to start. With the serenity of the beautiful Fish River Sun golf course and the rising sun greeting them, the drivers, however, knew that the next morning was make or break. Day 4 and the final day of hard racing dawned crisply and rather coolly, but the men still left standing in the 2007 African Heritage Cross Country would need all their smarts to get it back to the finish line to get the points they needed on the World Series log. For the final time, crews and drivers made sure that everything was ready to be broken just one more time.
Yeah, no, definitely. We've learned a lot. This race is so much different from the other races. We've got a little bit of everything here. We've got very, very fast sections here, faster than any other race. And then you've got the forest sections and the mountain passes. We've got a lot of experience from this race.
And that's the only way to learn. For the Delmas lads, there was a scary moment or two.
Ja, ons het nie baie probleme gehad. Ons het op 'n stadium met ons bietjie brieke verloor daar by een van die bergpasse en goeders af. Toe het ons maar weet bietjie gepace, stadig gery en om gevat tot by DSP en dan ons weer die brieke reg opmaak daarso. So ja, andersins ag nie regtig moeilikheid nie, ja.
In the Rubicon Cup, there was a surprise for David White at interview time.
Okay, so I didn't know I was leader of the pack until now. I thought Koekoop passed me, but apparently with the time difference, I'm still ahead to about 35 seconds. And we're just going to push again and keep it on the road. There's not much 250 k's we have to do today, and we're going to go out flat out and enjoy it again, and just try to keep the car on the road, and not like yesterday all over the road, but we'll try our best.
The Norwegian Tollefsen, with his overly developed sense of speed and adventure, was battling to hold back. But on the last day, he was determined to do it right.
I think the biggest problem is just to hold back, because I said I was going to hold back yesterday, and it's a very great temptation to just race as always. It's just a lot more fun to race, and the only wise thing now to do is to hold back, save the car, make sure there's no mistakes, because it's so crucial for us to get a win and to get the priority for that car.
And the Brazilian car had to do it the other way round. They had to go flat out to catch the Nissan. As things were, the proudly South African Nissan Navara came out of the blocks flying and built an even bigger lead. And the liaison stage would be make or break for them. Keep it going, but not slow enough to give away too much time. Luckily, they had more than an hour's lead to play with. Early on, the crew of Nobra and Palmero gave it stick and tried as hard as they could in the X3 in the colours of the X-Raid. But this very experienced team unfortunately had disaster lurking for them not long after these shots were captured. The old adage, don't count them before they've hatched, was probably coined for off-road racing. The Italians were storming through the last day in the little Pajero and were actually outpacing the Nissan, going great guns after firmly getting to grips with the South African conditions. The Whites and their back turned up the heat and were obviously having a fun time. David was probably still smiling under that helmet of his as they blazed by on their way to the second fastest clocking of the day. Van Tonder and Guapa were going well, but at least they corrected it. Still, they set the fastest time of 3 hours and 21 minutes, the quickest of the fourth and final day's racing. They were very impressive in amongst the internationals, proving that they could hold their own very well. But they did wrong slot a few times on stage 4. Ramon Besaidnout and Stefan Locke were still doing the farming town of Delmas proud and were actually clocking the third fastest time for the last 250 k's worth of racing. A good performance. But there was a big scare for Tollefsen and Quinn. They hit a cow a few k's out from the finish, lost their bonnet and almost lost the radiator, and had to nurse the Nissan through to the line. It was sounding a little worse for wear. And that allowed Riccardo Garossi and Rudy Briani in their Rally Art Mitsubishi to win the final stage by exactly 4 minutes. But in the greater scheme of things, it made very little impact. It was, however, a great moral victory for the visitors from Italy. Back at the finish line in Bishu, and with the VIPs ready to welcome the victorious finishers after 1,350 tortuous kilometers of racing, it was a battered and torn Nissan that made its appearance over the brow of the last hill to take the checkered flag. The The Rally Art Divisione Fioristrada Italia Mitsubishi Motorsports, to give the team their correct name, brought it home next, completing the distance in a tad over 21 hours. But the bubbly went to Tollefson and Evans, who made a feast of it, and Tollefson was standing downwind. Ruacon's David and Gary White comfortably won the special invitational class in 19 hours and 50 minutes with a fine run, with the Ford Ranger right on their exhaust and 2 minutes quicker overall. For Tollefson, getting to the dairy early almost spelt disaster.
Yes, we around the corner, cows, as so many times before, but this time they were a lot closer, and we braked and steered and did everything we could to avoid it, but hit the cow. And unfortunately, the cow is dead. I think that's the first animal I've ever killed. I don't like killing animals. But so we carried on to the end of the stage and saw that the temperature was coming up. So we stopped and got in like a blind plug. It helped us. We were late for the next start. And then we drove through very gently, stopping the engine, downhill, rolling.
But they got it there in one piece, almost. After a MacGyver job, it was a close call for co-driver Quinn Evans.
Yeah, it was close. We were hoping that there wasn't very much damage, but as soon as we got out, I could see water. And obviously that meant we had to stop and make sure we did the best job we could of plugging it up. But yeah, very, very close.
The Italians were smiling broadly and then admitted that it wasn't really that tough.
Yeah, finally, thank you very much. It's not very, very difficult, but our mission is finished.
A tough day, tough race.
A very beautiful race, very completely different legs. Absolutely interesting. I hope that in Europe next year many drivers join us in this race.
Would you like to come back next year?
Absolutely. For race and for holidays too, because South Africa is fantastic.
Van Tonder and Guapa celebrated the invitational win, and for Ford, it meant one more trophy on the mantelpiece.
We're really glad that we do the race, and that race, it's really fantastic, and we want to thank the organizers for giving us the opportunity to do this race. It's a lot of mileage, and I must tell you, this Ford Ranger is excellent. We never got out the car once for a problem. The car was excellent. I think we've got a wonderful car, and it was a wonderful event. We really thank everybody involved here.
The Beamer ran into trouble when an off-road excursion broke a steering rack, and lateness penalties dropped them down the order and out of the runners-up spot. A sad finish for the Brazilians, but it was a resounding victory for the Norwegian-British conglomeration in the South African car, if you're still with us on this one. A big win for them and a solid drive over almost 1,000 miles, and Van Tonder and Guapa were 55 minutes behind in the South African racing category. At the prize giving, the MEC for Sport was on hand to present Nissan with their trophies, a beautiful reminder of the region's biggest export, and Evans was happy to receive the spoils of victory. The FIA were also happy to be a part of the race.
Erky, from an official point of view, what was the Heritage Rally for you like here in East London?
This is my first visit in this country, and it's always great pleasure for me to come here, and this event especially. I regret that we didn't have so many international drivers this year, but these local drivers made this full-scale event. I love this country, I love this area, which is beautiful and offers best possibilities for this kind of cross-country events. So you have great future in front of you.
That was the ultimate test, the ABSA Off-Road Championship. Now